So yeah, today I am here to talk about the topic of the roadmaps and how do we communicate this to our audiences. I think roadmaps are something typically tied to the figure of the product manager or product owner, but it's also true that in the end, any team can have a roadmap, right? Like, well, I will start talking a bit about me. I am now working as a product owner in Haufe Group. But my experience actually is in my previous experience is in UX design. Actually, I even worked part-time in the course that you have in All Women as an instructor for the UX design group. But now, since a bit more than 2 years ago, I moved to the role of first product manager. Then they did some kind of restructure, and now it's a product owner / product manager. And I'm working here in Haufe for the last 4 years. Before that, I have worked in different startups, usually smaller companies than Haufe. I started my path towards this kind of technological fields in London when I was young. And then I have also, well, I'm from Barcelona, and I have also worked in Berlin as Haufe. It's a German company that facilitated me this kind of transition. You have my LinkedIn profile here if you want to check it later or contact. I just wanted to very briefly explain a bit what we do in Haufe, because I think it's probably a company that you have not heard that much about. So yeah, basically it's a company that helps very big organizations. So there are clients of us that are such as Nike, for example, or consultancies like KPMG or Accenture, or really large companies that want to do a transition, moving from kind of a classic structure, very hierarchical, etc., to a more modern organization of the way they work, giving more protagonism to their employees, more power to decide their goals and to contribute to the general company strategy, etc. And in general terms, it divides in these three sections. Haufe Academy is where they do trainings and learning courses that are both online and on-site. Then there is the more classic side that tackles solution for HR services, and then Haufe Talent, which is the part that we have in Barcelona, that is more dedicated to the employees itself. So, for example, we have tools for teams to analyze their health as a team, or to organize their objectives, or for the employees to decide their development goals, etc. And this is where I am focused now. Before starting, I wanted to also ask quickly, just to know a bit about you. What is your current role? You can also say, for example, if you don't have previous experience working as a UX designer or as a product manager, like, you can specify that you would be a student of this. But I just want to know a bit of what you do. Let me go here in the chat. I don't see any answer. I don't know, Anna, if I'm looking it right, or you also don't see it.
Actually, the chat, if you check, there's one that it's called Stage, and that's where people are going to be talking. And if not, in the one that's the event, I can see here. Okay, CEO of Tech Startup. I want to be a PM. I'm in the process. Content manager, junior data scientist, software engineer. Oh, so many. Oh my God. Creative director and design educator, aspiring PM coming from education background, looking for a job as a UX writer, UX UI designer, data analytics, project management.
Great. Yeah, I'm reading it now. It's just that before it was not appearing.
No worries.
So Okay, so I guess for you, the topic of a roadmap, of course, it's not something new, but I believe it's helpful, or at least for me, it has been always to look at examples and to reflect a bit on how different people structures it, right? To be able to do it better, to keep improving. So let me go back to the presentation. This is, I just wanted to start with an example of one of my roadmaps. Of course, this is something that we iterate on, so it's never fixed. But I will explain you also a bit later what are the things that worked or that didn't work about this kind of structure that you can see here with a discovery funnel, another one for delivery, this kind of themes, the horizons, etc. But now, first, even though in the presentation I will focus more on the way that we communicate this roadmap, I just wanted to also say a couple of things about the way we create it, because in the end it's very much tied to the further communication. First of all, these would be the things, right? The main things why we use the roadmap. Want to be transparent with everyone, all the stakeholders, customers, users, etc., of what we are doing, to be able to align. Sometimes there are topics that are not only dependent on us, right? They need many different teams or other people in the company working on it in order to be doable. So that's a way that you can communicate and trigger these discussions. Also to align with a big picture of the company. The company, usually, even if it's very small, it should have some kind of big objectives or vision, right? And this is a way to see if the topics that we are working on align to that. And finally, as just a support tool to trigger the feedback from the people and be able to redirect your product based on that. First of all, we need to decide what goes in the roadmap, right? And one important thing is to collect the feedback from the data that you get, from the user interviews, from the comments from customers or from your other stakeholders. It's very important to take into account that in the end, also the discussion is what matters more than the output of the roadmap itself. What I consider a roadmap is always one pager, right? Something that it's a deliverable, but the process is much more fruitful in the end than the output itself. And finally, the prioritization is also an important part. In the past, I have done it for the ones of you that I saw that are working as product management. In product management, you might have used these kind of tools where you can put scores, for example, to each of the topics based on the complexity, on the urgency, on the value added for users, and then do some kind of final scoring to prioritize each of the topics. And that's something that you could do with your stakeholders, for example. I have used this in the past in more complex setups, but right now that it's a very clear team, we are small and we have a very clear scope. I don't use that. I do the first proposal of prioritization, and then, of course, I discuss it with the technical lead of the team, with the whole engineering team, stakeholders, with my manager, of course, etc. So yeah, let's move to the part of presenting the roadmap. First, I want to know, for whom do you think that we are making this roadmap? And if you could also answer in this chat, it would be great. So is it for yourself to gain more clarity? Is it for your boss, for your investors? Just so that you know, I will make a few of these questions during the presentation, so just so that you're ready to answer. Okay, Evelyn said for everyone involved in the project, all stakeholders. Useful for everyone, okay. Yeah. So these clients and investors, okay. This depends on your project, of course, but it's very important to know in that at the time of communicating who will be your audience. Will it be the product team? Because then maybe it needs to be more specific. Will it be the executives? Do you need a buy-in from them in order to continue with your project so that you get the necessary finance? Is it the customer-facing teams like client managers, sales, etc.? Are other teams that need to work on, for example, on topics together with you, or are the customers? There are people that decide to have even different roadmaps for different audiences, which is understandable, but I think it's more transparent to have always the same final one pager that is your roadmap that you keep updating, and just put the different contexts in every presentation. So for example, for executives that are more far from your product, you might want to add some kind of demo, right, of the product, or at least some screenshots, etc., so that they know more of what you're talking about, because otherwise they might be too far to it. While for the product team, maybe you need to contextualize more the details. For the product team, of course, then we will have, for example, in my case, I also have an Epic backlog, and also the backlog of sprint by sprint, which is much more specific, but this kind of general roadmap is also useful every 2 or 3 months to just give a general direction, and I think they really appreciate that. And when it has been a while without showing this actually, or this kind of update to the team, they actually ask for it because they want to know, okay, where are we going in long term, right? And to the customers, this is a very personal decision. In the past, I have shown it as well. But right now that I work with a product, for example, it's almost 700 customers, it would be quite difficult to show it to all. And if we only show it to whenever randomly we have a conversation with one, I think this specific feedback would take much more or too much importance in the overall product. And also we want to be the ones really guiding the direction. So we talk about roadmap items in high level with customers, but never showing the specific timelines, etc. This is maybe quite obvious, but it's important to also always start with the why you're doing that, and if possible, put specific examples. Explain, for example, the data that has brought you to take one specific topic as with a maximum priority, or even quotes of comments, or even audios from user interviews that you have done, so that they can also engage with the importance of that. And this is a way in which also the other stakeholders maybe that had something else in mind, just because once one customer mentioned that, they will understand why that topic is prioritized lower maybe than another one, right? And if possible, also it's important to tie the topics with the metrics that you are following. So, and now we will talk about the structure of the roadmap and how do we present it. What do you think that needs to appear in a roadmap? Can you also answer in the chat? I think it's also the tool that, for me at least, it takes a while to be able to visualize your answers. So I see timing, timeline, milestones, deadlines. ACI, I don't know what it means. Timelines, individual functionality, timeframes. Key milestones. Okay. So yeah, resources, yeah, that's a good point as well. Timescales, major dependencies of various parts, potential blockers, stakeholder input. Okay, stakeholder input, like what I consider a roadmap, maybe it's much more simple than that, but of course it does come from the stakeholder input. While thinking about the structure, we will see some examples now. You need to think whether you want to show a distinction between items that you are kind of identifying or analyzing, just things that are in progress, or are things that are already done and that are in the validation phase. Like, for example, you might want to put in a roadmap that you will dedicate time to do user interviews, right? Or something like that. I usually, right now, always opt for having only topics, so not this kind of processes or yeah, kind of more management topics, but more the product itself topics. Another tip is to use color codes that can group the topics either based on themes or the colors can define what is the status of each topic. And regarding the timeline, this is the most tricky point. If you are very, very confident about your team, it's true that it might be possible to put like real dates, right? But as you know, nowadays we all work in this agile mode, so it's kind of difficult to see, for example, what you will do in a year from now. If your roadmap is a year view, then for me, I would say it will be probably wrong, right, to put this specific month, this specific topic will be achieved. But if the roadmap maybe it's something like quarterly, then of course it's much more manageable to be able to set a specific date. Now we see some examples of the structure of how you can structure a roadmap. One would be with this Gantt traffic light that would have the typical Gantt chart structure. Here in one axis, you would have the priority. So the ones on top would be the maximum priority. And then here you would have the time in quarters, first quarter, second, etc. And then using the colors as a kind of traffic light to indicate what is the health. So, for example, if you see this more achievable or it's in a good track or in a bad track. Then this is one that I really like because it helps you with a discussion of creating themes for your product. What are the main themes of your product that you are taking care of? And then from those themes, derive the topics itself. And here, in terms of the timeline, as you can see, is much more abstract. This I also like it more, that you can say, okay, what are we currently working on? What will be the next thing? And then the future, things that we know we want to do someday, but are not planned to start soon. This is goal OKR based. If in your company you do OKRs, this can be your guiding factor as well, your objectives here, and then you would derive the key results or the topics here. Now I'm only showing examples, but of course I think then you can combine it in the best way that you want. This is a dashboard roadmap. Maybe these product metrics are more financial, so to say, but you can basically structure or put the metrics that you are using for your product. And then here you can also indicate the timeline, as in the topics that are in the discovery phase, the topics that will come next, or that you just shipped. This is one that I really like as well, the discovery and delivery roadmap. You can have these 2 lanes and then maybe use a timeline with horizons to indicate the progress, instead of also talking about first quarter, second quarter, etc. And finally, you can use also the visual size of the elements to indicate, in this case, how much effort it will. Also decide to use the size to indicate how important is this topic, and you should always put some kind of timeline, even if it's more abstract as well. So again, this is, for example, one that I did, that I mix various concepts here. For me, this was really helpful to discuss with the head of the business unit, for example, what were the main themes that we needed to take care of, right? Were we forgetting about something or not? And then for me, it was very important as well to talk about the discovery items, because sometimes when you show a roadmap, there are stakeholders that can have something in mind and they think that if it's not there right now, it's completely forgotten, right? And it's just that maybe you don't want to put it because it will not be done for sure in the next month, even in the next half a year. But you still have it there, right, in the funnel. So it's a way of saying, hey, like, we know about this. It's some kind of nice to have, but it's just that it will not be developed in the next month because there are other priorities. What I found out with this kind of structure is that it was a bit confusing. For example, the fact that it had at the same time discovery and delivery, but also horizon and second horizon, this was creating a bit of confusion. And also with horizons, in the end, I ended up changing it even to quarters, because they were always also asking, like, but what does it mean horizon one? So is it the quarter one, or, like, people sometimes wants to be more specific. So I did some kind of simplification. This is the first one that I did. I in this case, I did leave here the horizons, but I took, for example, the discovery phase, just considering that in the end, discovery, the only thing that it means is that it will be developed later, right? So you can just put it also in the second horizon, and this is also a way of dividing this in a timeline. And this also triggers a discussion of, okay, what are the most important themes? In this case, it was ordered, for example, by importance as well of the topics, and just to have some kind of motivation sentence for as a guiding principle for the roadmap. That's something that, of course, you need to keep reviewing almost in a weekly or monthly basis. And what I found out here is that as it was quite charged of topics, especially in this first version, for example. So I decided to simplify it, having one for the first and second horizon, and then another one that would be for the future, in which you can also see how there are some topics, like the ones related to data science or AI, that have more presence here with the color code, while in the first horizon, there isn't that much of that. And well, I also wanted to say that sometimes you don't need to overcomplicate you that much. In that case, for example, because I also have this background in design, I decided to do it in Sketch, and the way I was sharing it was with an InVision link that allowed me to control the versions, right, and to make sure that people could only access the link and not have an outdated document, and they would always see the newer version. In this case, I did this with a plugin that Altagian has in the Confluence, because Confluence for our company is a space that we use a lot for communication. Everyone can access it. And again, I like this fact that it's not a document that gets outdated only in a few weeks, but that they only have the link and they can always see the latest version. That's much more simple, as you can see. And in this case, because it's a simpler team, a simpler scope of the project, I feel more confident putting the months, also because it's really at the beginning. I wanted to also talk about the kind of management activities that needed to be done, like the customer reviews, etc., just to give a bigger picture for the stakeholders of where we were with everything. While here in the development, it would be the kind of product topics. And this doesn't take out the fact, like, so what you really need is a roadmap, right? But you shouldn't be obsessed with the way. For example, if you use Jira, like in our case, you will probably be using also Epic, and you can have an Epic board as well. And in this case, it's very easy because then every story that you create during your sprints can be tied to an epic. And then these epics can also have some kind of timeline, right? And in this case, we can call it funnel, analyzing, implementing, and done. It could also be the names of months, for example. So this is up to you to discuss, but you really don't need to go that much farther than this. The most important thing is to have something in place to be sure that it's updated always. If you have time to then do something else and keep it updated, then maybe it's better for the kind of presentation that you want to do with more high level or specific details. And I just wanted to quickly talk about a couple of potential reactions that your audience can have when presenting a roadmap. One is that someone, for example, can ask, okay, why did you prioritize this topic over that one, right? Because for me, it's more important. And to me, here, the most important thing is to focus the conversation not in what is missing, but in what is there and why, as I said at the beginning. So I think if you explain again why that topic was at the beginning, what was the pain, for example, for users, or what was the finding from your interviews, or what is the data that is showing that this should be improved, or how is this contributing to some specific objective of that quarter of your company, then everyone will be able to understand that. But also don't dismiss this kind of feedback, because of course there are many people that are also dependent on what your team delivers, right? So it's normal that they also want to know, and that they also need to know why is the priority like that. And another kind of comment could be that if you have chosen to have one more abstract timeline, that they want to know exactly that it will be there, because there are clients that really expect this in that very soon, right, or with urgency. And I think here what you can do is to, if it's difficult for you to say one specific date, I think it's much better not to say it, and to say, just to promise that you will keep updating these people, to invite them, for example, to your sprint reviews, which happen in our case, for example, every 2 weeks, so that anything comes as a surprise, and even to help them or to offer them to be supporting their client meetings, for example, to explain how you work, etc., and maybe to even provide some kind of demos of the little things that you are doing towards that achievement or that topic. And I just wanted to finish saying this, that the roadmap should always be the result of a reflection that you do in the company vision or mission, and the strategy maybe of your business unit if you work in a bigger company, from which you will derive the backlog that you work sprint by sprint. And that's it for the presentation.
Thank you, Marina. That was fantastic. I think an eye-opener for a lot of people. We have some questions. I don't think we're going to get to go through all of them. But I think you've answered already, because Natalie asked, what software are you currently using to create roadmaps? Okay. And I think this you mentioned.
Well, I can mention a few, because I have used many actually, depending on the need that I had. For example, there was some time that we were reorganized in a company, and we really needed to join forces with different teams and to make it kind of more democratic, because we all use Miro. We were doing the roadmap with Miro, that it has a roadmap tool as well. Of course, there are, if you are a very big company organization and you have resources, there are these kind of softwares that are only for that, like Product Plan, for example, that are great, right? But I think you shouldn't get stuck in the fact that you don't have that. There are always ways to do it. beginning, since I was a designer, I was using Sketch also for myself to be able to customize exactly everything. But then Confluence also has a way of doing it. Miro, I would say Jira, almost every tool that you would use in a company will have a way or another for you to do all your roadmap.
That's great. We had one from the beginning that says, which UX skills do you think were useful as your role as PM or PO? And which were the ones that you had to learn?
Okay. So the ones that were, I think there were many skills that were very useful because I was already used to think about the users a lot. And for example, there are tasks that are actually always a bit blurry to whom they belong as a responsibility. Like, for example, user interviews. Is this something that should be driven by a PO or by a UX designer, right? Or to which extent do you clarify the task, right? So in the end, if you already have this ability to create a content or a direction for what you're doing, that's something that will come very handy. And one thing that I noticed that I think I can have better than maybe POs that don't come from UX design is also the kind of consideration for the technical team and the knowledge that in the end they are the ones that will do the thing. So it's very important to always get their feedback on how much it will take to do something, do the discussions with them, etc. I think in that sense there are maybe product managers that come more from the business roles that they usually see themselves as more disattached to the team. And I think maybe there are companies that work like that, but I think it's much better for a product to when they are all together and not separated.
Fantastic. Okay, I think we're going to have to leave it here.
Yes,
but
sorry.
Thank you very, very much. Yeah, this was wonderful. Thank you, Marina. And I know you've given your LinkedIn at the beginning, but if not, like I said, every company has its booth, so people can reach out to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful afternoon.